Hello, welcome back. How are you doing? Another live stream. Today it's all about rules and we're returning to the beginning. We're returning to where I started with a lot of the things that I was playing before I really sort of got into role-playing games. This is back when I was playing Pick a Path, fighting fantasy books, using those on my own solo, and then of course playing with my family HeroQuest. So HeroQuest is the topic for today. I'll be going over the basic rules for this. I'll put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll. How are you doing, Fred Huber? I'm all about answering questions as best I can. It has been a long time since I played this game, but I have played it quite a lot. So, and the rules have changed. There are different versions of HeroQuest. This is the newest version of HeroQuest, so everything that I'm talking about here will be related to the newest version of HeroQuest, for those of you who are wondering. Anyway, let's get straight into the topic, because that is why you're here in the first place. So let's do that. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about HeroQuest. Now, HeroQuest, strictly speaking, is a board game. And I suppose you could certainly say that it's not really a role-playing game. But one of the things you've got to understand about HeroQuest and the game HeroQuest and how it developed is that HeroQuest was developed and created from Dungeons and Dragons. All of the rules, the concepts, the processes, they are all based off Dungeons and Dragons. Obviously, newer versions of Dungeons and Dragons, no, but older versions of Dungeons and Dragons. So that means that a lot of those aspects that you might enjoy, in other words, the interaction, the talking side of things, the dialogue aspect, they're not necessarily hard-baked into HeroQuest. You certainly could do that. But this is where me and my family started. I actually started with Fighting Fantasy, Steve Jackson, Ian Livingston playing solo through their Fighting Fantasy books, which were Pick a Path. And then, of course, I came across HeroQuest well before I came across Dungeons and Dragons. And so we would play this a lot. And so what I want to do is I want to use the maps and miniatures and go through and explain to the best of my ability how the game works. Now, for those of you who are looking at this and thinking, I have no use for this, I'm already playing Dungeons and Dragons, why would I need a board game? Now, the good thing about a board game is it sets some definite parameters, right? If you don't want to deal with too much, then you don't have to. The other thing about HeroQuest that I'd like to point out is you can play with an adult and have a good time. You can play with a child. Now, my sister was about 4.5 when she started playing HeroQuest, and she could still understand the rules, because the rules and the systems were so basic and so simple, it was not a problem for her. So that means you can sit at a table with adults and children and play this game and you'll be fine. And if you would add in more of a dialogue and repertoire between your characters and the monsters and the creatures, you can. That's totally up to you. So how's it going, Fred Huber? Hello, Luna. I'm going to probably stick to just pointing at the game board. So I'm throwing off the hat. The hat is gone so that I keep my head nice and cool. And I will look at chat as I go through this, but I want to sort of go through the basic rules and obviously answer any questions you might have or just talk about the game. As I said, one of my first loves is HeroQuest. Here we are. Here is the game board. Now, before you see the basics that you will really start with. This is the character cards. Now, they're a bit smaller than you might be used to. They used to be a lot larger than this. They have all of the information on it that you will require, such as if you want to play an elf, a dwarf, a barbarian, or a wizard. The newer version of the game allows for you to play many more different classes, okay, or different characters. You don't just have to play these 4 characters. You can get expansions, and they have some specific information on them that you need to know about, right? So first off, there's an attack dice. So these are the attack dice. The white dice here are the attack dice. And it'll tell you how many attack dice you have for a character. So whenever you make an attack with your weapons, that's what you're using. You roll that many tells you 2 attack dice for the elf, so you roll 2 attack dice for the elf. It has how many defend dice, because you also defend attacks. So defend dice are here marked. So for the elf it's 2, for the dwarf it's 2, okay, for the barbarian it's 2, most of them are 2. So you roll 2 of these, that's for defending. You also have body points. This is how many wounds you can take. So you have 6 for an elf, but different characters have different numbers of hit points. The wizard has the least amount, and you will lose these hit points as you go and regain them if you start using magic or potions to restore them. Okay, after every adventure you get all of your body points back. It's a new adventure, a new process. Mind points are a little bit more complicated. Mind points relate often to how spells might affect you. They don't come into play very often, but they are important, so you need to know how that works. Quite often, if it says mind points 4, that means you're probably going to be rolling 4 of these 6-sided dice. Okay, just normal 6-sided dice. For a dwarf, they have 3. For a barbarian, they have 2. Okay, those are your basic stats, and then you have movement. Now, it's not set movement for the characters. The monsters have set movement. I'll show you that shortly. But you don't start with set movement. You have to roll the dice, and whatever you roll on those dice, okay, that's the maximum distance you can move. You don't have to use all of your movement, but that's as far as you can go. This is probably one of the things that probably didn't need to stay in the game, but they've decided that retaining the rolling of dice for movement is a good idea. It tells you what starting weapon you have, and it tells you what sort of armor you have, okay, if you have any. None of these characters have armor, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so that's sort of a basic overview. We also have a treasure pile, because you're going to be looking for treasure as you explore in HeroQuest. You're going to have monsters to fight, and we've got a monster here. This is a skeleton. You're going to be fighting various creatures like this as you make your way through. And of course, the thing that works with this game is that there is a selection of player characters playing elf, dwarf, barbarian, wizard, or whatever you've got. And then there is Zargon. Zargon is like a game master or a dungeon master. And what Zargon does is Zargon runs all of the monsters. That's how it works. That's how the game is set up. So you have 2 different factions, essentially. You have the player characters, and you have Zargon, which is essentially a game master or a dungeon master. And they will take turns through playing this game. Okay. All right, so now that I've kind of given you a bit of a rough breakdown, probably most of you know how this works, but let's start looking at some of the game mechanics. Okay, first off, whoever is the game master, in other words, whoever is playing Zargon, okay, let's say this is our Zargon here, they're going to present their adventure quest. This is where you read out your adventure hook, what they have to do, what the players or the heroes will have to actually do in the adventure. Just like any kind of role-playing game, it's exactly the same. There's no difference. The only difference is that we now have to actually set out the board. It's still a board game, so there's still a process. So the first thing you do on your game board is you look at your map, because there will be a set out map for your adventure, whether you've made it yourself or it's already pre-printed. You put down the staircase tile, like so, and then you put in a closed door. You need to have a closed door because the door has not been opened. That's the first thing that needs to take place, wherever the door is supposed to be. You then put your characters who are going to be taking their turns onto the staircase. And there are 4 characters to be played. And it's probably best whoever's going to go first be at the front of the staircase. Okay, it's probably the best way to deal with it. Okay, so we've done that. We're ready to go. We've read out our adventure, put down the staircase, got the characters out, we've got our open door. We're now ready to go. And then we go through a turn process. Now, a lot of you are probably already familiar with a turn process with any role-playing game that you're playing. But the turn process is very simple. Okay, all of the heroes or player characters, they're going to go first, and then Zargon goes last. That's it. It's very simple. There is no rolling for initiative. There is no deciding who's going to start where. That doesn't matter. It frankly doesn't matter which player character begins. You guys just amongst yourselves decide who's going to go first, whoever's playing a hero. And like I said, the Game Master, Zargon, Dungeon Master, they go last. That's it. Very, very simple. So everything that the player characters are doing will initiate everything that's going to happen. Okay, so let's move some of this stuff out of the way a little bit. So what have you got here? Fred Huber said here, you can slowly transition from a board game to adding more complex rules and more in-depth stories. And Fred Huber makes a very good point. All of the basics in terms of how a role-playing game will work, particularly when it comes to dungeon crawling, is here. The dialogue and role-play aspect is very easy to incorporate into a game like this. The reason being is you don't need rules for it. You simply don't need rules. You don't need to make checks or dice rolls. You just have a conversation, and that's perfectly fine. So I'm going to move all of these cards just a little bit further out of the way. I don't want to move them completely out of the way because I might need to use them. And I want to get rid of those monsters for now. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to sort of demonstrate the turn process for the hero since they're the first ones to go, right? Okay. The hero's turn. So what does the hero's turn look like? Well, the hero's turn always starts with you roll 2 6-sided dice. So I do that. Now, I'm going to decide to start off, we're going to have the barbarian go first. So barbarian's going to go first. I rolled a 5 and a 3. That's 8. So I've got 8 squares that I can move. All right, so that's fine. So I'm going to move 8 squares. All right, so I go 1, 2, 3. I get to there and I want to open the door. You can open a door as a free action. Looking at something or looking down a hallway or in a room is a free action. Opening a door is a free action. You can do it at any point. Once you open a door, you cannot close a door. So I've opened the door. Okay, and I've moved 3 squares. I still have 5 more squares left. I can also look down here if I want to as a free action. There's no limit to how many free actions you can have, whether you're opening doors or looking. It doesn't matter. 4, 5. I look down here. I see a door. Okay, so we put down the door. And maybe there is a blockage at the end of this passage. So I put in a blockage like so. Okay, that's the end of that passage. I can still move if I want to, because remember I've only moved 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can't quite get to the door. I need to be adjacent to the door to be able to open that door if I want to. Yep. So that's how your turn works. Now there is 6 different things you can do as a basic action. Now, I haven't done a basic action. All I've done is moved and used free actions to either look or open doors. But what I want to do before I go over the different basic actions that you can do, which generally tend to be the same things every single time, I want to at least cover some of the restrictions and how movement works, because it's very particular. Okay, so let's just move that stuff out of the way a little bit. And whoops, I just moved that out of the way. That's not going to help. So let's just move that down. Okay. So movement. How does movement and what sort of restrictions are there on movement and how that works for your character? Right now you can see that essentially it looks like you can split up your movement when you move through a door. Okay. So there are probably, I would say, 7 things you need to know about character movement or hero movement. First off, a hero doesn't have to use all of their movement. Even though I rolled 8, I don't have to use all of my movement. You can only enter rooms through doors. So you can't go into a room through the wall. You must go through an open door. Yep. Generally, there are some things, some spells that might allow you to go through a wall or a door. You may pass through another hero's space. So if you want to move through another hero's space, you want to move past them, because they didn't move very fast, you can move through their square. You can't stay on their square, okay? What you can't do is you can't pass through a monster's square. So if there is a monster here, I can't go onto their square or through their square. If I wanted to do that, it wouldn't be possible. Moving through a monster square is not an option. So don't try to do that. You can't move through around a wall or move diagonally. So again, it says you have to go through a doorway that's open, generally, but you can't move diagonally. You must move either horizontally or vertically. There is no diagonal movement for your character. You can't split up your movement. Now, the only time you can't split up your movement is when you're taking your action. Essentially, the idea being that if you take your action, you've used up your movement. Now, you could take an action and then move, but you couldn't move part of your movement, then do your basic action and then move again. What you can do though is you can move, use a free action and then move again. You can't share the same square with another hero or another monster. So you can't stand in the same square as a monster. You can't stand in the same square as another hero. Okay, you can't take up the same space, except when you're on the stairs. So when you're on the staircase or in a pit trap, that's the only exception to this in terms of restriction and movement. So there's the movement rules for the game, right there. I'm just going to grab some water and I'll keep going. Where are we? Next lot of stuff. Here we go. Actions. So I said there are 6 different types of actions in the game. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward ourselves just a little bit. I'm going to get rid of this monster here. I'm going to open this door. We're going to just fast track things. And when you open a door, if there are things in the room that they should be able to see, then you need to put those things out. So if there's furniture, put out the furniture. If there's any additional furniture in there, put out that. If there's another door, it's probably going to be closed because it hasn't been opened yet, so put the door in. If there's a monster in a room, then place the monster that's supposed to be in that room in that room. So there we go. We'll put a monster in there, and maybe we have 2 monsters. So with that's as far as we've got. But when it rolls around to the hero's turn, there are 6 actions that you can take. 1, you can attack with a weapon. 2, you can cast a spell. 3, you can search for treasure under certain circumstances. You can search for treasure in a room, but not in a corridor. You can search for a secret door. You can search for traps. Or you can disable a trap if you found a trap to be disabled. Those are the 6 things that you can do in the game. That's it. So it's very simple. It's essentially boiling down the concept of dungeon delving and Dungeons and Dragons to the basics of what you would normally do when you're playing that game. Make an attack, cast a spell, search for treasure, search for secret doors, search for traps, disable traps. That's it. Now, there are some criteria, there's some certain things that you have to do when you're taking those actions, clearly, but let's at least demonstrate making an attack with a weapon. If I have the barbarian move into the room, because of course I would have to roll my dice to see how far I can move, I got 4, 3 and a 1, so 1, 2, I can move up and attack the Chaos Wizard, the Archmage or whatever, right? So how do I do that? I look at my character for the barbarian. It says attack 3, that means I use 3 attack dice. So I grab my attack dice, I'm just going to move these over here for a second, and I roll them. And every time I get a skull, I cause a wound, potentially. A shield means I do nothing, so I got 2 skulls. 2 skulls is bad. 2 skulls means that things could go down really badly for that particular character. Now with a wizard of some kind, you're usually going to have some dice you roll to defend with. In this case, what I've done is I've selected a character that doesn't have a specific card for that, so I'm not going to worry about it. Let's just say that it's 2 in this case. This wizard has 2 defense dice. So you roll 2 defense dice to try to stop the barbarian's blow. I roll the skull, which means that it will have no effect against the attack, and I rolled a shield, but it's a white shield. You'll see that there is more than one shield. This is a black shield. If I had rolled a black shield, I would have stopped one of the skulls getting through. Because I rolled a white shield, I do not stop any of the damage. So for every skull you get on your combat dice, that is 1 body point worth of damage that you take. So that means that this particular Chaos Wizard or Necromancer is about to take 2 body points of damage. And you deduct that from their tally. Now if they had 4, they now have 2. Okay? So that's how an attack works. If I had chosen not to engage or attack the mage, and instead I'd moved through and tried to attack the skeleton, okay, I'm using a broadsword. Now there are special rules around the broadsword which allow it to attack diagonally. Most weapons you can't do that, but I can move here. If I didn't have a broadsword, you need to be adjacent, sort of in either horizontal or vertical with your enemy when you're making your attack. You need special weapons to be able to attack diagonally. The broadsword does allow to do this, but I'm going to move here instead. And I can attack the skeleton. So again, you grab your 3 attack dice for your barbarian. I rolled two skulls again and a shield. So I do 2 body points of damage, but the skeleton gets to defend. Now the skeleton has certain defense dice. You'll notice on here it says defense dice 2. So I rolled 2 dice for defending, and I rolled 1 monster skull, one monster shield. Okay, a black shield, a monster shield, that means I stop one of these skulls. So I take one away. The other one was a skull, so it means nothing. So the skeleton takes 1 body point. Because a skeleton has only 1 body point, it is dead. Remove it from play. Okay, you don't lie it down, they're not going to be coming back, it's dead. Once your monsters that are in the game actually reach 0 hit points, they're removed from play. They're no longer in play. Okay, very, very simple. So that is the process of making an attack with a weapon. And all the characters have some sort of weapon they can use if they want to. Even the wizard has a dagger that they can use to make attacks with if they wanted to. Okay, so that is the attack roll and how to defend with your monsters. The same thing applies when monsters attack, but I'll do that a little bit later. Okay, so you can see how that. I'll do a demonstration. It'll be fine. Next thing, what about casting a spell? Well, you need to be a wizard or an elf to be able to cast spells. So if we have a wizard and they're in the room and they want to cast a spell, say on this necromancer here, they have to look at the spells they have available. With a wizard character, you're going to get a certain number of spells that you can cast. You get 3 sets of cards, and each set of cards has 3 cards you can use, which means essentially you have 9 spells that you can cast. So what you do is you grab your spells and you decide which spell would I like to cast on this particular character here, which is going to be more useful to me, which is the one that would be more suitable. There is even one here for healing your body, so you can do all sorts of things. But we have one here called Ball of Flame. So how does Ball of Flame work? I need to declare, once I've moved and I can see my target, I need to declare that I'm casting a spell. I need to tell the Zargon or the Game Master, Dungeon Master, what spell I'm casting. I'm casting Ball of Flame on this evil wizard. This spell may be cast on any one monster, enveloping it in a ball of fire. It inflicts 2 body points of damage. The monster then rolls 2 red dice. These are the movement dice here, the standard dice. For each 5 or 6 roll, the damage is reduced by 1 point. So, right now, before we even do anything, potentially this evil wizard is going to take 2 body points worth of damage. But what we do is we then roll 2 6-sided dice, and for every 6 or 5 I get, that reduces the damage. So if I rolled 2 6s, no damage to our evil wizard. If I had rolled all 1s, or 1 or a 4, then all of the body points would have been lost, so it would lose 2 body points. So that is how that spell works. Now each spell works slightly different, with different mechanics. I'm not going to go through all of them today because I'll come back to that some other time. But that's the basic process. You move yourself into position so you can see the target for your spell. You cast the spell by declaring it and stating to the Zargon or the Game Master, Dungeon Master, what spell you're casting, and away you go. So very, very simple. It's not complicated. It's pretty easy to deal with. Okay. What about searching for treasure? Because I could choose to search for treasure. There are some criteria for searching for treasure, unfortunately. Things that we need to consider when we're doing that. Things that limit our ability to search for treasure. First of all, when we search for treasure, we can only search for treasure in a room, not in a corridor. So the elf here could not search the corridor for treasure. There won't be treasure in the corridor. Each hero can only search the same room for treasure once. So no matter who you are, whatever character you are, you can only search that room once for treasure. That's it. A room must be empty of monsters to search for treasure. So if there's somebody who is a monster, this would be classified as a monster, you can't search for treasure on your turn as an action. But if there was no monster there, okay, then you can. You select a treasure card from the top of the pile when searching for treasure. So you say, I'm searching for treasure, there are no monsters around, I haven't already searched this room, I select a treasure card from the top of the pile. Okay. And whatever the treasure is, that is the treasure I get. In this case, I got Heroic Brew. So Heroic Brew says, you are surprised to find a leather bag hanging on the wall. If you drink the contents before you attack, you can make 2 attacks instead of 1. This may only be used once. Do not return this card to the deck. So in other words, it doesn't get returned to the deck and during your game. It doesn't go to the bottom of the deck at all. Okay. And it does not take an action to use the potion. You simply drink the potion before you make your attack. Does that make sense? It's essentially like a free action. Okay, it is not an action to drink the heroic potion or brew. So that's using your treasure. Now there are lots of different things in the treasure pile. If, say for example, our barbarian found a heroic brew, maybe our elf searches the room, and what will they find? Well, they found a hazard in this case. While you are searching, a hidden arrow shoots from the wall and strikes you. You lose 1 body point and your turn is over. Return this card to the bottom of the deck. So in other words, it goes back into the deck, but our elf has just lost a body point from a trap that's been triggered and fired. There is no defending. Put it to the bottom of the deck. What if our wizard decides to search for treasure on their turn? We get another hazard. Suddenly the stone beneath your feet gives way. You fall into a shallow hole, losing 1 body point and end your turn. You may climb out and move normally on your next turn, not this turn but the next turn. Return this card to the bottom of the deck. So these are things that you'll definitely keep getting finding. If you keep playing for long enough, there's a point where you have essentially used up all the treasure there is in the deck. Now what if the dwarf wants to search for treasure? Yes, you declare it. I've got another hazard. Maybe this deck is not shuffled. Probably not shuffled. That'll be part of the problem, I'd imagine. So there's only so many bits of treasure to be found in the treasure deck. So the longer you play, the more difficult you make it for yourself. Gold. So if I picked up the first one on the top, dwarf gets gold. Amidst the old rags, tattered fur, robes, and soiled blankets, you find a collection of 15 gold coins. Record the money on your character sheet. Do not return this card to the deck. So any treasure you find out of the treasure pile is always generally going to be removed from the pile. Okay? So you're not going to be able to find them again, which means that the treasure pile is full of hazards and traps, but it's also got wandering monsters that you might have to fight. So it becomes more and more dangerous and less of an advantage for you to continue exploring and searching for treasure, because there's only so much treasure in the treasure pile. So that is the process of searching for treasure in this game. Okay. What if we want to do something like search for a secret door? Secret doors are very common in Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games. They've been around a really long time. They are things that potentially hide something we might be able to use. Just give me a second, I'll just drink some water. Hello, how are you doing? Now, let's see if I can get this right name right, Rex. Deploribus Rex. Deploribus Rex. I think I've got the name right. You let me know if I got it wrong. What if I want to search for a secret door? What's that process look like? Well, maybe it's possible to find a secret door in this room. I could choose to search this room for a secret door. Or I could choose to search for a secret door in the corridor, looking down this way, and down this pathway to see if there's a secret door. So how does that work? When you search for a secret door, it's your action. You can only search for a secret door if there are no monsters visible to your character. If you can see monsters with your character in any direction, whether it's in a room or in a corridor, you can't search for a secret door. Secret doors can be found in rooms and corridors, and a secret door, when you found it or find it, is not open. It is still closed. Okay? You simply indicate as Zargon, the game master, where that secret door is. The character then needs to move to the secret door, and they need to open the secret door. If they do not move to the location, okay, so you search down here, there are no secret doors here, no secret doors down this way, but there's a secret door right there. So you need to actually move to that space to be able to open the secret door. So if I move there, and I choose, okay, I know where the secret door is, now I want to open it. That's the time when you place out the counter for the secret door. No other time do you place out the counter for a secret door. There's the secret door, it is now open. Okay, and you place it on the board. Very, very simple. Okay, what if I want to deal with traps? Again, traps are a little bit complicated. Again, it's an action. There are a lot of different traps in HeroQuest, but when I search for traps with my action, you can only search for a trap, whether it's in a corridor or a room, if there are no monsters visible to your character. As long as you can't see monsters, whether they're in rooms or corridors, that's the only time you can search for a trap. And when you find a trap, you do not place the trap out. You simply indicate where it is. So the dwarf says, I look for traps after they've moved, whatever they've rolled on their dice. And the Game Master says, there is a trap on this desk. There's a trap on this desk. That's where it is. There are 4 different types of traps. I'm going to go over them in a second. Okay. You can have a trap indicated on the floor. It can be on the fireplace. You can place it on a piece of furniture. Okay. So usually with traps, you select a square or a space for it, whether it's furniture or a square or space on the game board. Okay. Anybody can search for traps. You do not need to be a dwarf to search for traps. Any character can search for a trap. It's not a problem. I just selected a dwarf because I hadn't done anything with a dwarf at this point. Now, what if I find a trap? I know where the trap is, okay? The trap is on the furniture here. What if I want to disable or disarm the trap? Disabling and disarming a trap is an action. To do so, you need to be a dwarf character, or you need to have a toolkit to disarm the trap. What you do is you move your character to the square to disarm the trap, and then you roll one combat dice. So I move to the square where the trap is indicated, okay, the piece of furniture in this case, and I roll 1 combat dice. And I rolled a 1. When I roll a 1 on a combat dice, the trap will spring, and I lose 1 body point. Okay. Now, usually when it comes to traps, each trap has a different effect. In this case, let's just say it's just 1 body point. Depending on the type of trap, each trap has a slightly different effect. But you spring the trap if you roll a skull, okay? And you'll lose a certain number of body points. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 2, maybe it's none, depending on what happens. If I roll a shield on the combat dice, okay, the trap is disarmed. Now that would apply if I was using any other character other than the dwarf. The dwarf has very specific rules for how you can disable a trap. which are slightly different to how the basic tools work. And because there are 3 images on each combat dice, or 3 symbols on each combat dice, it means when you disable a trap and you're dealing with a dwarf, okay, it's going to look a little different. So before you move, you must announce that you're moving to the trap square. You need to then do your state that you're going to actually try to disable the trap that you've found, and you roll 1 combat dice just as before with a dwarf. And when you do so, okay, if you roll a black shield, so the black shield here, if you roll that one, you have sprung the trap and you suffer body damage, whatever that might be, whatever the trap does, okay? If you roll anything except a black shield, the trap is disarmed. So if I roll a skull with my dwarf, okay, that means it's disarmed. If I roll a white shield, the hero shield, it's disarmed. There is only 1 chance in 6 that I will fail the disarming check for a dwarf. A dwarf works very differently to a standard character using a toolkit. Okay, if you get the black shield, you fail, you spring the trap. You roll anything else other than that, shield or skull, you take no damage whatsoever, and the trap is disarmed. When you actually disable a trap, you need to consider it removed from the game board. It no longer exists. It's gone. So that is how the dwarf works with regard to disabling or disarming a trap. Okay, you probably need to know what type of traps there are and what the traps do. And this is what I'll cover right now. Just give me a second, and I just wanted to catch up on chat. Correct Latin for king of the... Alright, deploribus. Thanks for the overview for this game. No problem. So I'm going to come back to this game next week, and for the next 3 weeks actually. But there's one more thing I would like to cover for today before I finish up. And that is the different types of traps. I said there are 4 different types of traps in this game. And there are. So let's have a look at how those traps might operate or work in this game. The 4 types of traps are, there is the pit trap, the falling block trap, the spear trap, and the chest and furniture trap. Okay, we were dealing with a furniture and chest trap, a furniture trap just a second ago. But you can put traps in all sorts of things. You can put them on a treasure chest. There is actually a piece of terrain that you can place out. If you want them to find a treasure chest or treasure, you can put a treasure chest out. They exist. Okay. So you can put those things out if you need to. And so, yes, there's a whole bunch of little bits of terrain, different pieces of furniture. So what is the first type of trap? How does a pit trap work? It's very simple. If you wind up not finding the trap and you step into the trap space for a pit trap, you place the counter on the space where the pit trap was. So if you walk to here and the Zargon or the Game Master, Dungeon Master says you just stepped into a pit trap, place the pit trap down and you lose 1 body point as you fall into the trap. Automatic, there's no dice rolls, you just lose 1 body point. You fall into the trap, that's it. There's also another trap called a falling block trap. So if you're moving with your wizard to a different location and you decide you want to go down here and you go to, say to here, step here, and there's actually a trap there, Zargon will say you have activated a trap. It's a falling block trap. So with a falling block trap, how does a falling block trap work? Put the counter out for the falling block trap because it's going to be going down, and then you roll 3 of these little suckers, 3 combat dice, and for every skull you get, that's how many body points you lose. So I rolled 2 skulls. That means you're going to lose 2 body points for your wizard. A falling block trap can also block a corridor too. Okay, so you just move your wizard to wherever you need to after, but they take the damage. Okay. There is also a thing called a spear trap. There is no token for a spear trap. But with a spear trap, it works very simply. Say our barbarian is walking down here and they step into a square just here, and the Zargon, the Game Master, Dungeon Master, says, you have activated a trap. It is a spear trap. Okay, what do I do with a spear trap? Very simple. Grab 1 combat dice. And if you roll a skull, you lose 1 body point. So there is a fair chance that you won't take any damage and you will actually be alright from a spear trap. So that means no damage. If I'd rolled a skull, I would lose 1 body point. If I have rolled a shield, a monster shield, not a hero shield, I would lose no body points. You have to roll a skull. There is no counter to put it there. Once a spear trap is activated, they generally don't reactivate. Okay, once you use a spear, you activate a spear trap, it's usually done its thing. Okay, and then of course we were talking about before furniture traps. So maybe we have the elf, and they accidentally activate a trap on this treasure chest. How does a treasure chest trap work? It activates if they spring it. So if they spring it, okay, I go here and I open the chest, or I climb onto a piece of furniture, or I climb on top of the chest. You activate the trap if you open the chest, fine. It's either going to be a pit trap, a falling block trap, a spear trap, or a trap of your design. Some traps are specific to a treasure chest, and the mechanics for them are very much set up by Zargon or whoever's doing the game mastering for the game. So there are no specific mechanics for a treasure chest or a furniture trap, because they can be many different things. Does that make sense? Very simple. And that is traps. Just going back to chat. BC, hello. How are you doing, BC? I am the only one at home who likes the game. Are you? That is a shame. I really do think there's a lot of value in HeroQuest. Do you know, one of the things that holds back HeroQuest, and I'm going to move away from the camera looking at the board right now, and I'll go back to my head cam. One of the huge benefits to HeroQuest is it's easy to get people into playing this game, because the mechanics behind it are so simple, and there are no sort of super special circumstances that tend to come into and kick into place. Basically, if you want to do something, you can attack, you can cast a spell. If you want to do anything else, okay, you've got to make sure there's no monsters around. Okay, you can't search for treasure, can't search for secret doors, can't search for traps. You just can't do those things unless there are no monsters around. So that's an easy rule that covers all of those different things. Okay. So it's nice and consistent. But the great thing too is it's very easy for you to layer dialogue over this. As Zargon or the Game Master or Dungeon Master of HeroQuest, you can have your monsters have a conversation with the player characters before you have a fight. They don't need to necessarily just walk around and kill monsters and collect treasure and disable traps or avoid them. You can do a little bit more with it. And this is the great thing about role-playing games, is the only thing you need mechanics for in a role-playing game, and if you even trying to turn it, so I turned Dungeons and Dragons, the board game. There's a board game that's very much like this, HeroQuest. You can turn it into a role-playing game by using the mechanics of the board game for the combat side, and everything else you just do. It's just a dialogue. It's already got mechanics built into the game for exploration. Obviously overland travel or overland exploration won't work with a game like this because it's designed for dungeon delving, but it would be very easy to transition from HeroQuest to play it as it is, then play it by including a dialogue with people and the monsters that you encounter along the way, which means you wouldn't necessarily have to kill every single monster. You could do that and homebrew it. We'll talk about homebrewing HeroQuest. A lot of people homebrew HeroQuest. And then from there, you transition into playing another role-playing game, whether that's Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, whatever it is, because those are more complicated systems. Matthew, hello Matthew, how are you doing? fun bunch of games. I used to play both. Are we talking about? Are we talking about HeroQuest and something else? I'm not too sure. So what I'm going to do is next week, I'm going to go over complex combat mechanics. Okay. Oh, I forgot about doing the monsters. I actually probably should demonstrate the monsters. It's very, very much the same as a. It's almost identical, really, to doing a turn with the player characters. But let's do a monster. Let's say there is a wandering monster. Okay, the wandering monster gets found, or our players move into a space and there is a wandering monster, and the wandering monster doesn't get killed. All right, that could happen. It's possible. You never know. So our barbarian is moving down here and they turn around the corner and there's a monster in the corridor waiting for them. What sort of monster it is, we have a look and we see what it is. In this case, it is a, let's grab an orc. There's an orc on guard. Okay. And maybe they move up to them, they have their turn, they attack, they don't do enough damage to kill the orc, and it's now Zargon's turn because all the player characters, all the heroes have taken their turn, because Zargon goes last. So what Zargon does is Zargon grabs the card for that monster. This is the orc. You have a look at your card and you see my orc has an attack dice of 3. So I get to roll 3 of these dice to attack the barbarian on my turn as Zargon. Roll your dice, like so. For every skull that I get, I do damage, potentially. I didn't roll any, so I'll be doing no damage. Let's say I did at least 1. Okay, I'm just going to turn 1 over. So there's a possibility I do 1 body point of damage to the barbarian. The barbarian still gets to defend. The defend dice for a barbarian is 2 combat dice. So grab 2 combat dice, roll for the barbarian. I rolled a shield, a monster shield, that won't help me, and a skull. I need to get a hero shield to stop the blow. So 1 body point is lost off the barbarian from the orc making their attack. The orc can move after they've made an attack. They can move away. They can run to a different location or they can stay there. It's up to them. There are no attacks of opportunity in HeroQuest. For those of you who are familiar with Dungeons & Dragons and the opportunity attack or attack of opportunity, they don't exist. If you move away from somebody who's right up against you, you do not get attacked for free. There's no such thing. That part of the rule system has been removed to make this simple and easy for you to understand. So attacks always work with, you roll the attack dice, you work out how many skulls there are, and then you defend with whatever defense dice you have, and how many shields you get determines whether you actually stop those attacks coming through. And for a monster to defend, they need to get the monster shield, the black shield, and for a hero to defend successfully, they need the white shield, the hero shield, to be successful. Okay, super simple, super easy. All the monsters work like this. Some of your monsters will cast spells, and that's why you have a list of, or a deck of cards called dread spells. So if you have a spellcaster who casts spells, then you'll have this deck of cards here. You might have all these cards, you might have just some of these cards. Depends on the adventure, how it's been set out. Okay, I'll go over magic and casting some of the time. So the intention is, behind this game, is that today I just go over the basics, which I've done. Then next week I'll go over complex combat mechanics. So what that means is there's an equipment deck. So when you get enough gold, you can buy equipment with the equipment deck. So I'll go over all the equipment in the equipment deck. I will also go over all of the artifacts, because there are a bunch of artifacts as well. So we'll go over all of those as well next week. The following week after that, I'll do magic. There are a lot of spells to cover. So all the spells for the heroes or the player characters I will cover. And then I'll also cover the Zargon or the Game Master or Dungeon Master's evil spells, the dread spells. I'll cover all of those and how they work. After that, we'll also have I have a homebrew rules system, or homebrew rules that you could use. These are a collection of homebrew rules that either we've used myself in my game, or other people have, and I wanted to share them with you, and you decide what you want to do with them, okay? BC brought the Chaos deck for my 87 board game version, okay? Great addition to the game. Fair enough. The Chaos Event deck. Yeah, there are lots of sort of add-ons to HeroQuest. And really, I encourage you, if you have kids and you're trying to get them to play Dungeons and Dragons, and you're finding that the mathematics behind playing D&D is just too much, and you don't want to go and play a different game that sort of is very different in style, then try doing this. Try HeroQuest. Honestly, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think it is a great starting off point. I played it with my family for years, and we had a good time. So have you played HeroQuest before? Yes, 57%. No, 38%. Just watching, 4% out of 21 votes. Cool. Now, one of the reasons why I'm doing this is because I noticed a lot of people were looking on my channel for HeroQuest. So I decided I would do that. I wanted to roll back round and start doing other game systems anyway. So next 3 weeks, we're going to do HeroQuest. After that, we're probably going to... I should be trying to show or demonstrate Pathfinder. But because I've not played Pathfinder 2nd edition, I don't really want to cover the rules just yet because there are so many and it's so complicated. I've played 3.5. I would like to cover those rules at some point. Again, it's super complicated and I've been reluctant to do that. What I will do is I will return in the following months, and I can't promise you when, to Star Wars Saga, which is a Star Wars role-playing game. It's not a board game, it's a role-playing game, but Star Wars. And then we'll also be doing Dungeons & Dragons 4E. I'll be covering 5E. I'll be covering BECME Dungeons & Dragons, or Basic Dungeons & Dragons. And I'll also be covering Shadow Dark, which is really just a retro clone of that. And I'm hoping in the future, as I learn new systems, we will go and we'll look at something like the Cypher system eventually. And of course, I will get around to doing 3.5. I don't know about AD&D. I'm kind of reluctant to do that myself. I just think that it might be a bit much for me to cope with. And there'll potentially be other games that I will also demonstrate. I would certainly like to demonstrate Sagas, but Sagas is not actually finalised. It's still in a Kickstarter form, and it's a super simple rule system. I would also like to demonstrate Fate, because I've played Fate, but the problem with demonstrating Fate is I don't have the resources to do so. Getting Fate or Fudge dice in New Zealand is not actually very easy. In fact, it's literally impossible, so I just haven't done it. But yeah, there are going to be a return to many of the systems that I covered last year. Anyway, hopefully this was useful to you. I want to thank all of you for watching and listening. I want to thank all of my patrons who support me so I can cover different rule systems on this channel. And yes, I know HeroQuest, strictly speaking, is not a role-playing game. It's more of a board game, but I still enjoy it. I think that it's worth in it. I want to thank you for taking part in that poll, listening and watching, and for those of you who were brave enough to comment in the live chat, Deploris Rex, BC, Matthew, and I believe Fred Huber and Luna Foxfire. Thank you for commenting. I do appreciate it. Really, really great. So, what is this? What do you got here, Rex? We will have to smuggle some Fate dice in a cake and mail it to you. Somebody did actually try to send me Fate Core or Fate Accelerated and some Fate dice to New Zealand, and they actually found it was so difficult for them to achieve, they gave up. It's unfortunate because they were, they obviously could get it in North America, but to get it from wherever it is to me in New Zealand proved to be too difficult, and somebody really did have a good hard look at trying to make that possible. It just didn't work, unfortunately. So yeah, well, I don't know what will happen with that. What do you got here, Anthony? What is the best way to handle solo play regarding traps and monsters AI with no app is used? Okay, when no app is used. I don't know that there is a very good way of dealing with that, frankly. If you want to play on your own, the game is not set up to be played solo. So you would have to play... Okay, so, all right, so you're asking me a question now. Let's answer that question, and then I'm going to go. So the thing with playing solo HeroQuest is you would have to play 4 characters. Now, if you're fine with playing 4 characters, that's great, but it doesn't solve the problem of everything else, because you need to be able to use an app. There is a HeroQuest app that allows you to have something operate as Zargon or the Game Master or the Dungeon Master. So HeroQuest app. You can download this. I believe it is free. I don't think it costs anything. I will put a link into the chat so that you can access it. And if you want to use it, you can. So if you want to play solo, you could. That is the link there. There is the App Store. It's a Google App Store. I've tried the app out. It's actually pretty good. You know, I think that there's a lot to be said for using that app. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be a waste of your time. That is if you want to play solo. I have not figured out how to do that physically with the board game solo yet. So you maybe use the board game and the app together is maybe a solution. I don't know. I'm not too sure. Anyway, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Is it not available in the EU? Oh no, really? Oh, that's ridiculous. Oh my gosh. All right.